Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys are all doing well. Coming at you like a Sith Lord here with the Dreaded Haggard podcast. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is going to be back. So this is something that we had on the channel. It's been a year or two ago. It's been a long time, but we had a weekly podcast where we'd have on guests and talk about tactics and tournaments and Total War Warhammer multiplayer. And now we're going to be back to that. So once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, we'll have an episode. But it's not going to just be Total War. I mean, the majority of them will be Total War focused because that's kind of what we do here on the channel. But we'll be covering other RTS games as well. So we'll have on folks from the Age of Empire community to talk about tactics, free-for-all, competitive 1v1, Company of Heroes. We could talk about the meta there as well. Stormgate when that comes out. It's basically just going to be an RTS podcast where we talk about the games that we cover here on Yield channel. So tonight we're going to be talking about the state of the game for Total War Warhammer multiplayer. So obviously there's a lot of excitement for upcoming action. We've been in a bit of a drought, right, for new stuff, but now we have the Chaos Dwarves coming. I would imagine there's going to be some bouncing changes with that as well, or like a bounce patch to come with that. So the meta is going to be shaking up. Here you can see on Total Tavern, we're currently on Season 3, so we're going to be having the Season 3 Grand Finals here in the next few days, which is super exciting on Sunday, the 26th. And after that, when we get the Chaos Dwarf release, we're going to be starting a new season after that. So that's going to be really fun for getting back into tournaments. Folks will have the opportunity to jump to the top of the leaderboard. A lot of really, really fun stuff on the horizon. But before all that, I wanted to talk about some things that I think really, really need to be changed for the benefit of Total War Warhammer multiplayer. I think it would be a huge win, not only for us as a community, but also for Creative Assembly, right? Like it would be... It would make it easier for people to get into the game. It would make it a more fun and more smooth experience, because something that is very easy to forget when we're here in our YouTube community and we're here in Discord, like we assume that everybody knows about these communities they can play in, these tournaments and different things like that. And everyone has access to these like maps that we have through our map pack, which basically save the game. I honestly think if we didn't get new maps and we were just stuck with Itza and Black Ark as like our only good playable maps, like, I think in many ways, multiplayer could have been in a serious decline or could have died out to a large extent, right? So just adding these new maps that we as the community did, I think saved multiplayer to an extent. I mean, again, people would still play. I would probably still be hosting tournaments, but it would be nowhere near as cool in my opinion. But yeah, one thing we forget though, and kind of off on a little tangent there, is that most people who get in and, just play multiplayer for the first time, they probably don't watch YouTube. They probably aren't in our Discord communities. They just go to quick battles and they queue up and they get put on these awful maps like Galleon's Cove and Grove of Slaughter, which I think still has some crashing issues, I'm not sure, and the Silver Spire. These maps are really, really bad because now in domination mode, your starting funds are starting with like over 9,000. It's a pretty big starting army. And I think some of these maps, which were designed in the beginning, were designed for armies to be starting with like 4,000, because when domination first came out and it was really, really rough, your armies would have like just over 4,000 resources, right? So it was a little bit tough, and you can see the age on those maps and how they were designed for a bit of a different time. Aesthetically, they're very cool. Might have been okay for that, but even still, there's tons of line of sight issues. There's tons of choke points. Pathing is really, really weird on like the crossing of Sea of Claws. And this is the experience that most people are having when they first get into multiplayer, right? It's not good. And again, there's some people who are very tenacious. They'll play and then they'll start searching up multiplayer and they really want to get into it. And then thankfully they're able to find like the mods that we use to play with our new maps and maybe find their way to communities and tournaments. And that's where it really shines. But this leads us on to our first talking point, which is going to be Creative Assembly really needs to add, either make a bunch of new maps themselves if they just absolutely refuse to add our maps, or just, take these maps from the Total Tavern Tournament map pack that have been play tested hundreds and hundreds of times, are very functional, very proven, and add them to the base game. This is basically, I feel as if 90% of the work has been done. They can take those maps, they can do a pass over and just add them to the game. And this would be a massive, massive improvement for folks who are like just getting into multiplayer. They have no idea about the community or the scene, and then they just get in and play a ladder game. And what if they, you load into Borderlow Landing, which is one of our great custom maps, right? It looks like you're landing on the coast, you're protecting the Bretonnian village against coastal invaders. It's well balanced, it's cool, it's dynamic, it really suits the game. And I think that would be huge. And the same thing can be said for land battles as well. We do have some land battle maps that have been made as well. But generally speaking, just getting better maps. It's not as much of an issue for land battles. Like I find that some of the maps on ladder for land battles are okay, but even still, it would greatly benefit from some of the maps that community members have made. But really, really, that I think is super pertinent for domination mode. There needs to be some new maps because that's the gateway. This is the first experience most people have. And honestly, if I didn't play Total War, I was just getting into it. One of my friends was like, hey, come try multiplayer. I fire it up. I get into Galleon's Cove. My army is like stuck pathing around. None of my guns or cannons can shoot because line of sight's terrible. Like I would probably just not be interested. I'd be like, this is multiplayer. Like this is bad. So I think we need to get those new maps in. And honestly, I'm more than happy to work with Creative Assembly to do that, to meet with you guys. I assume they've probably been busy, obviously, with Chaos Dwarves and things like that. But I really hope that's something we can make happen. And I can promise you guys, I'm going to keep pushing that because, again, you have to look at it as the first gateway. Having a good rank system is another thing we can talk about. So Company of Heroes, right, just came out. It doesn't have a ranked ladder, but it has a functional ladder, an unranked one, a leaderboard, which isn't broken. You can see who the highest ranked players are. You can see the win and loss rates with all the different factions you play. It's very bare bones, but it's exponentially better than what we have in Total War. If you guys have looked at the Total War leaderboards, they are a disaster, absolute disaster. It's currently bugged where people just have 1 million points and the top 50 or 100 players are all bugged. That is something that for other RTS games like in Age of Empires recently and Company of Heroes, I love climbing the leaderboards, trying to get my ranking higher. In Age of Empires, you have the Conqueror system where you climb and you get these different badges. I don't think this is ever going to happen in Total War Warhammer. I don't think it's going to be enough of a priority for Creative Assembly, but if you're listening, I think this is something for future games that could be pretty huge. In Total War Warhammer, for example, you could have a different ranking system where if you're ranks whatever and your ELO is this, you get a certain badge on your profile, and there's a silver, gold, bronze, platinum, diamond, conqueror, whatever. Ever chosen rank is the maximum rank. Something like that would be pretty huge. I don't think this is a huge priority because I would imagine the resources they allocate to multiplayer are very limited. I would rather have the maps added in, but I do think having a functional ladder system that we as a community could come together and value. Obviously, I went and made one on Total Tavern, so we have Total Tavern here, right? And we have a tournament leaderboard, which is very cool. But it'd be nice to have a casual leaderboard. I think that'd be really fun. I think it would create a lot of hey, everybody wants to get on. Let's have some streams. Let's play on the leaderboard. But again, I'm not holding my breath for that. It's not super important. We made a tournament leaderboard here with unlockable avatars. So for example, here you can see. For any of you guys who are watching this, I'm pulling up a player's profile right now, and you can see he has a certain number of wins, so he unlocks a Vlad von Karstein avatar. And if I go to my profile, you can see, I believe I have a Steam Tank, and that's for winning 40-plus games with the Empire. So here on Total Tavern, you can unlock avatars as you win with different factions. It's really, really fun, and that would be something that's great. That's what Warcraft 3 did back in the day, and when I was 13, 14 years old, dude, I just was having so much fun chasing avatars in Warcraft 3. I remember trying to get that Illidan avatar for winning with random. It was great fun, and we have that on Total Tavern. So I don't think that's we have it in the community, but having a functional leaderboard would be really cool because it's how you kind of measure yourself when you're getting into multiplayer. You can go check that out. But yeah, just kind of a random tangent there. But really, I do think getting the maps into the base game would be huge. We wouldn't have to use mods anymore. It would massively improve the multiplayer experience for new players who've just been perpetually suffering on terrible maps. And that would be really, really big. Now, next thing I want to talk about, which has been a pet peeve of mine for a long time, in domination mode, is the Lord system. So you've obviously seen Skaven players bring their... I don't think this is a glaring issue, in terms of balance and whatnot, but it is in terms of immersion. And from myself, I play tabletop, right? I have an Empire army in Warhammer Fantasy. I have a 40k army. I like my Lord to be my Lord. I don't want to see a Skaven slave being somebody's Lord and having it being unsummoned to avoid a game mechanic. It's really dumb. So I would like there to be some sort of a system where maybe no matter where your Lord is, if they're in reinforcements, that is your Lord. Just no more having a Skaven slave or a Marauder or a Chaos Warhound as your Lord and unsummoning it and just hiding it the whole game. That is, it's not. It just feels it's just not fun to play against. It takes away a lot of the thematics of the game, and for some factions, it is a little bit cheesy for sure. We see this with Celastra and getting into unsummoning. That'll be something we'll talk about in the next kind of a couple minutes here, but yeah, even still, this is something that's really big for me. One of the things that Land Battles does better, quite a bit better, is that from a spectator's perspective, it's fun. You get two armies showing up, each has this badass Lord who's leading the army, and it makes for an epic clash, right? In Domination, you can have that as well, but oftentimes you'll see people using these unsummoning tactics or, making some random wizard their Lord, which was kind of fun at first as a little bit of a gimmick. Oh, cool, look, the Firebelly's the Lord of the army, but at the end of the day, I think the Lord should be your Lord. I think it's very Warhammer Fantasy to have kind of a hero, a centerpiece. We have all these epic characters. So maybe, I don't know what the solution is to this. If you guys have any suggestions that you could provide in the comments, that'd be great. But I think Just having your Lord be your Lord no matter where it is in your army would be big. And if you unsummon your Lord, you should take a penalty for your Lord fleeing the battlefield. Because, you're refreshing your Lord. You're sending it. He fled the battlefield. The troops are like, hey, where'd Karl Franz go? And then maybe you resummon him and it gets rid of the penalty. But I think when your Lord is unsummoned, there should be some sort of a penalty. I think it's really, really dumb as it is now. And it like really ruins the immersion for me sometimes. Because, like as much of a competitive player as I am, I do like the immersion and kind of the aesthetic of it as well. And, that needs to be changed, man. Like, your Lord is your Lord no matter where it is. And maybe even there's something where your Lord has to be in your starting army. Like, the Lord cannot start in reserve. It has to be in your starting army. And that's just how you roll. I think these are easy fixes to make. That would be big wins for the community and would be much better than watching somebody just unsummoning Celostra 10 times to abuse her Knights Errant summon or having Escape Enslave as their Lord, which is just so dumb. I can't stand it. So this brings me on to the subject of unsummoning. So unsummoning is something that is really janky in Domination, and there's few things that are just more lame than seeing like, so let's say you have like a big dragon character like Malekith, right? He catches an enemy Lord, he's starting to kill it. The Lord creates like 10 feet of separation from you and disappears off the map, just teleports away, avoids the Lord death penalty, which is like a huge aspect of the game in multiplayer. It has been for years. That needs to be changed. Unsummoning in general, I think, needs to be reworked. Like, I really like how they do it in Company of Heroes 3, right? In Company of Heroes 3, when you want to run a unit and like refresh it, you have to run it back to your base and it's like under pressure the entire way. Maybe there could be something in like Domination mode where when you unsummon a unit, it has to route off the battlefield. So let's say like you click unsummon on a spearman, it immediately shatters them and they run off the edge of the battlefield to go be added back into your pool. Like, I think that would make more sense. It's like a tactical retreat. You're like, okay, fall back to the base camp, restock and come back, whatever, replenish your troops. I think something like that would be better because the unsummoning right now is so dumb. I can't tell you how like depressing it is when you see like you make this huge play, you make all this effort, you get some skirmish cav, you spend 10 minutes trying to outmaneuver your opponent's defenses, you finally get into that backfield, okay? And you get on top of their artillery and they unsummon it and they get a half refund. They get a refund for half of the cost of the artillery. You have a unit overextended. You made massive play sacrifices to get there and it feels really bad. So that's currently how it works. When you unsummon something, you get a refund based on the remaining HP of a unit. So this with artillery doesn't matter because artillery, it doesn't take into account ammunition. So at the very least, Creative Assembly should do something where if artillery ammunition needs to be factored in to unsummoning. But I really think the unsummoning system needs a massive rework. It's really dumb. I don't think it's good for gameplay. I think it's unbalanced. It's just like, or maybe a proximity I think could work as well. Like you get a Lord, like a Lord has to be like maybe 500 meters from another character to be unsummoned or something. Like the range of a cannon, like really far away. You can't unsummon when you're near an enemy because it's just so, I'm sure you guys have seen it in events and been like, oh yeah, that's kind of like lame when you see a Lord get unsummoned or whatever. And again, we see this with Celostra and Vampire Coast, just like summoning and unsummoning like the character, using her one ability, which doesn't cost, any HP. So you get like a half refund on her and you get a really powerful Knights Errant while also avoiding the Lord sniping penalty. So that's kind of on the subject we talked about before. I think that needs to be changed. So again, in summary, like new maps, I think that the Lord in your army should always be your Lord and they need to rework that. And unsummoning needs like a massive rework, I think. And again, I don't know if we're going to get that. I don't know if it's going to be a priority, but I think that the unsummoning system as it currently is really bad. I don't mind it as much with units, but still like unsummoning artillery or like a missile piece to get a refund. Like basically, yeah, when your opponent gets a good play on you, you can just kind of like get away. Like I can't tell you how many games I played in tournaments where I got back, my opponent had triple Screaming Skull catapults. I get like one cab back there, they unsummon all three of them and then use those refunds to like summon something that can crush my units back there. And I had to sacrifice value to get into their backfield, right? Like it's a tactical gambit, which I just like, yeah, it doesn't work out. So again, I think unsummoning needs to be looked at. And I think either adding a delay to unsummon, I actually really like the idea of units routing off the battlefield. So like they just run for the edge of the map. And then you could get that. And like Lords who are unsummoned should maybe give a penalty to your whole army because the Lord is technically not there providing his leadership. So it's like the Lord recently fled penalty, which can be mitigated by bringing the Lord back on, which is an expense, right? There's good balance and good play to that. But let me know what you guys think. So now another thing, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter podcast today since it's just me. These are just some topics that I wanted to talk about is going to be balancing. So we have the data and we can see that Slaanesh and Vampire counts are just massively better than everybody else. An 82% win rate with Slaanesh in tournament play, which we have a wide range of ability in tournament play. We have like crazy good players, we have intermediate players, beginners. I think we have a good spectrum of data, which is, I think, going to be probably superior to what Creative Assembly is getting on their quick battle system, right? Which again is using those maps we talked about earlier, so it's going to be like a little bit different. But anyways, 82%, 66%. There needs to be some sort of changes here. I understand folks coming from the campaign background might not want their, like, because Slaanesh in campaign isn't like, it's whatever, vampire counts in campaign, I understand having your units nerfed for multiplayer is kind of lame, but you can do this with cost adjustments as well. Slaanesh is a little bit trickier since it's really the mark of Slaanesh, which is a big problem, but if the units on Slaanesh were cost appropriate, like you made them more expensive because of how good the mark is, that would make some sense. So really you can adjust and balance a lot based on just nerfing like super overpowered abilities and units, which aren't even used in, people really don't use Hellstriders in campaign much anyways, right? Like just things like that. But I personally think anything over 60%, maybe Vampire Coast a little bit as well, but they're not like so bad. Like when I play Vampire Coast, I don't feel like I'm like being oppressed like I do with Vampire Counts and Slaanesh. But nerfing anything above 60%, I think would be a step in the right direction. And then anybody who's down here in the pits of hell, like Nurgle, Tzeentch, Kislev, High Elves, like anybody like below 45% should probably be buffed. Like, and honestly, I'm very impressive. Shout out to CA with how well balanced this game is, considering how many factions we have. It's really impressive. Like games like StarCraft, Warcraft 3. Let me have a sip of tea here real quick. Like all these games that have like 3 or 4 factions, they struggle to balance. And the fact that we have like this many factions here, if you look on the screen, that are like in a healthy range is super, super impressive. So yeah, I think we're very close to being there. Like all these things we're talking about tonight, like adding new maps, minor changes to unsummoning and Lord priority, as well as like very minor balancing stuff. We're very close to the promised land, like to just being like such a chef's kiss, like perfection, right? So yeah, I really, really hope we can get there. But so nerfing Slaanesh and Vampire Counts, that needs to happen. Also, buffing some of these factions, but it's a little bit tricky with Total War because a lot of the game balance does come down to like factions getting updated in DLC. Like Nurgle probably needs love. They recently got a big DLC and they still are terrible. Tzeentch, same thing. You could probably buff Tzeentch and Nurgle a little bit. Kislev, I don't think you need to buff them really because they're going to get a DLC and then we can evaluate from there. High Elves are like borderline being decent, so maybe just something really minor, if at all. Like they're close. They're at like 45%, which I think is healthy. It's really Kislev, Tzeentch, and Nurgle who need a little bit of milk, and Slaanesh and Vampire Counts need to be nerfed, I think. And Vampire Coast arguably could be in that territory as well. But you could also just like buff really oppressive units on their roster and oppressive abilities and combos. One of the reasons why Vampire Coast also climbed up so high is because of the abuse of Celestra and that unsummoned cheese. And if like we address some of the issues we talked about earlier in today's episode, that would kind of solve that a little bit. But yeah, those are just my thoughts, guys, on that. So again, just to kind of summarize some of the issues, I think we need new maps really, really bad. I think Lord unsummoning should be changed, and like the Lord priority of where it is in your army. I think that would make the game a much more immersive and fun experience. I think that unsummoning in general needs to be reworked. I think it's really, really janky, and it's one of the reasons why I think land battles in many ways can be more fun to watch, simply because it doesn't have that mechanic, and it's just really weird. It would be like if I was playing like tabletop 40k, right? Like, let's say I'm playing my Death Guard. Mortarian's at like, I don't know, like 1 HP or whatever, and like he's on the edge of the map, and the mission in 40k says, okay, you have to kill the enemy lord. If you kill, Mortarian with the Kingslayer, whatever, you get some points. And I'm just like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to deny you this victory condition, despite all the work you put in by just unsummoning him. It's just not good. Yeah, it's not good. That needs to be changed. And balancing is pretty close. Honestly, some of the recent balancing patches, I think Creative Assembly did a really good job with the undead balancing. To like Tomb Kings got brought down to being a healthy faction. Yeah, they're at 46% win rate, but that's not bad. They were lurking around 50% for like 80% of this season, which was a long time. But Vampire Counts and Slaanesh need a little bit of a nerf, I think, and and then we're almost there. We're good. We're looking all right. So overall, I think the state of the game is good. I think we have a pretty healthy tournament scene. We have a lot of tournament hosts. We have plenty of active players, as much as we've ever had, really. So yeah, I think we're in a good place. Just a couple things like this, and we'll be getting there for sure. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. Just wanted to kind of rant and talk about those different subjects. Let me know what topic you guys would like us to talk about in the next couple weeks or for the next episodes. If there's anything you want to discuss, I can bring on faction specialists and we could talk about their faction. Those will be longer. Those will be like 45 to like an hour long episodes. Today was just kind of a rant about some issues in the game that I think really need to be addressed, because it kind of can kill my will to play at times and make, like, I would imagine it has similar effects on many of you folks who are maybe watching or playing. And while also improving the experience for new players and improving the gateway upon which players get into the game. I think that's quite substantial. So hopefully my thoughts were somewhat coherent. I didn't have any coffee today, so I'm still a little bit scatterbrained, but we're getting there. So thank you guys for joining. And the Dreaded Haggard podcast is back. We'll be doing specialist episodes. Maybe those will be live. I think that'd be really good to do like a live podcast where we talk with our guests and they can field questions from chat, which I think would be good because you guys might have more questions than I do about these different factions. Let me look at this right now. Vampire counts literally are 13-1 against Khorne, which is insane. And Slaanesh, I don't think has any bad matchups. Yeah, like Slaanesh's one bad matchup is against dwarves. And that's like a very limited experience. It's like 1 in 3 or something like that. Yeah, it's just nuts, man. It's nuts. But I appreciate all you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. We'll be back. I'll try and get some proper lighting in here. I think the light bulb is actually out right now. So we're just like Palpatining in the darkness, dude. Yeah, it's like so haggard. But all right, guys, take care of yourselves. I really appreciate you all. The podcasts are also available for download. If you go to the link below, I believe you're going to be able to find it on Spotify and a couple other places if you want to like download them while you drive. Whatever, whatever works best for you, man. Yeah, it's going to be good. All right, take care of yourselves. See you next time, my friends. And we're back in business, baby. It's going to be a really fun couple months. Dude, there's some exciting events. I'm going to be trying to put on some big events as usual. You'll be seeing a lot more tournaments from me. And yeah, it's going to be good. Cheers, guys.